Hi. In the other videos of mine, I have discussed at some length how and why emotions are triggered and the way emotions are, as well as the premise of emotion, the genesis of emotion. In this particular chapter, I would like to focus a little on the human brain, how it builds and why it functions the way it does. Because emotion can never be understood unless brain is understood. But our brain is so complex and complicated a subject that even science has only scratched the surface of it. It was Albert Einstein who once said the human brain is the most mysterious of all mysteries of the known universe. And he who has never paused to wonder about this greatest wonder of all wonders is as good as dead, even if he is alive, and as good as blind, even if he has vision. Hence this attempt by me to explain a few facts about our brain, which are crucial to the understanding of our emotions. The views expressed here are not mine. They are views of different schools of thoughts, one of which there is clear consensus. I'm not a scientist. I'm only an emotional intelligence coach. Our brain is as inanimate as any other organ of the body is. It's not different from our other organs. It's made of the same biological stuff liver, kidney, and gallbladder are made of. But the difference is that it's an electrical organ of fully charged particles. It contains more than 100 billion neurons seamlessly pieced together. Each neuron has 40,000 connections. Each neuron is like a computer. Every cubic millimeter mass of the brain can contain 1 gigabyte of connections, which is denser than the densest memory chip that can be produced today. Thus, there are billions and billions of neurons with trillions and trillions of connections. The brain builds by forming networks, neurochemical circuits among cells. Every time we learn information, we learn data, we learn philosophy, we learn language. We make new connections. When parts are fired, nerve cells are wired. What is fired together or wired together? Remembering maintains and sustains the circuitry. Repeating it strengthens and hardwires the circuitry. Once hardwired, the brain begins to largely stay status quo because there is a glue that holds the connections together. When a part connected to a thing or event is fired in the brain, next connected to that thing or event is activated in the brain, which is what we call remembering. Our memory is nothing but a whole cluster of neurons and neural nets, which is like when we listen to an old song, all of a sudden, after a long time, past memories come flashing back, together with the place we were in them, persons we were with them, the time we were in them, the phase of life we lived through them. That music doesn't come exclusively as music in a linear fashion involving a single dimension. Instead, it comes as a whole background which then prevailed in a multi-dimensional holographic fashion. Because when the brain builds information, it builds in association by simultaneity. This process by the brain is called law of association by simultaneity. Thus, there are billions and billions of connections. It is this vast web of connections, astounding intricacy of circuits, dense, fast connections that allow us to think imaginatively, that allow us to think creatively, that allow us to have that infinite levels of mind, diverse variety of thoughts that we sometimes can have by changing the combinations and permutations of the way we fire the neuronal shafts. Discovery of neuroplasticity, hailed as one of the most astounding discoveries of the 20th century, changed everything upside down. It revealed that our brain is plastic in nature. It's malleable and adaptable. It shapes itself based on new thought, new experience, new belief. It revealed that our brain is neither fixed in its form nor fixed in its function. It revealed that even when we are into our 60s and 70s, the brain undergoes neurogenesis, which is birth of neurons. It revealed that experience alters biology, psychology alters physiology, even genes are turned off, genes are turned on, based on thoughts fired by the individual. All human beings have essentially two natures. The nature that he inherits from his parents through his genes, and the nature that he acquires through the culture. The person is with, the place he is in, the time he is in, the kind of things he is exposed to, all of them combine to shape of his character, depending upon which impacts him the most, depending upon which influences him the most. One nature becomes dominant, and the other nature becomes dominant. Parents do influence their children, but some children do the opposite of what their parents stand for. Marlon Brando, the famous American actor, was so socially conscious, was so socially minded, that he even rejected an Oscar award once, for the reason that the Oscar committee members' conduct was unobjective. But his son, Christian Brando, shot at a person right under his nose inside Brando's house. The incident shocked and shattered Brando's life, from which he never recovered. Seconds before the death by assassination, the death wish of King Faisal was that the life of the assassin should be spared. But the assassin, who happened to be his nephew, Prince Faisal, fired 14 shots to make sure that the death was instant. What about the difference between two Faisals, who came of the same lineage, but lived life in different cultures, whose experience and exposures were completely different, and that's what has made the difference. What is at the foundation of all our behavior or thoughts that we approve of as right, real, and rational? I remember having read this some time back, the story of two brothers, born of the same parents. One was a criminal and the other was an honest, upright, law-abiding, God-fearing professional. The criminal was asked, "Why have you become what you have?" He replied that my father was the reason. When asked what was his father, he said, "My father was a criminal." The same question was put to the other brother too, to find out what was his inspiration, what was his motivation to have become what he had. But he too said that my father was the reason. The questioner was shocked. The questioner said that, "But your father was a criminal." To which he replied, "Yes, my father was a criminal. Since my father was a criminal, my brother became a criminal. It was then and there I made up my mind that I should make a difference." This is why I say in all my programs that we should learn how to think thoughts against our thoughts, how to feel feelings against our feelings. Scientists divide, this is very, very important. Scientists divide our brain into three sections: thinking brain, doing brain, and being brain. When we learn information, when we learn data, when we learn philosophy, when we learn language, it's wired into the thinking brain. When we practice what we have learned, when we personalize what we have learned, it's wired into the doing brain. When we keep thinking the same thoughts, we keep feeling the same feelings, doing the same routines, it gets wired into the being brain. When we do something over and over and over again, the process first becomes easier. and then it becomes familiar, and then it becomes natural, and then it becomes automatic, and then it becomes subconscious, and then it becomes unconscious, as it always happens in the case of learning a language, learning to speak, learning to drive a car, learning to type letters with our fingers. We then begin to do things without our conscious awareness. We then begin to say things without our conscious awareness. We then begin to believe in things without our conscious awareness. We then begin to feel things without our conscious awareness. Because our habits, our beliefs, our behaviors, they all find their way into the subconscious realm of our brain. By the time we are into our 20s and 30s, 90% of who we are as an individual, our likes, our dislikes, our habits, our behavior, our beliefs, everything finds their way into the subconscious realm of our brain. But this is the reason when our brain is scanned in an fMRI, only 10% of the area of the brain is lit up, while the remaining 90% of the brain's area is dark, hidden, and unobservable, because it is subjective, subconscious, because it is microprocessing. This was the reason what scientists have earlier said, that human beings are using only 10% of their potential, and 90% of human potential is lying dormant, they said, but they later found out that 90% of the brain's area is microprocessing. And this is also the reason why after certain point in our life, we find difficulty making changes. Because when we want to change our mind, when we want to change our belief, when we want to change our behavior, it's an attempt by a 10% conscious thinking brain to change the 90% hardwired, subjective, subconscious being brain. As a result, the later always wins over the former because of its predominance. We cannot change it. It will only change us. We cannot change our mind. Our mind will change us. So to change mind is to change circuitry. To change circuitry is to change chemistry. To change chemistry is to change thoughts. But thoughts are products of the very connections inside. Therefore, it's only when we realize and recognize the fact that our feelings and emotions are not real, not rational, but chemically driven, not objective, but self-generated or system-generated. We will then be able to think thoughts against our thoughts. We will then be able to feel feelings against our feelings. We will then be able to prune away old connections and sprout new connections. To prove that we are what we are in terms of what our connections inside are, let me narrate a true story that took place in the US that will be shocking to hear. A boy will transform from outside and looks at his mother and says that you are not my mother, you look exactly like my mother. You are dressed exactly like my mother, you speak exactly like my mother, but you are not my mother, you are an imposter. The boy will accept his mother as his mother. It was a total rejection by the son of his mother, whom he loved so fondly for so many years. Relatives and friends were shocked. They first thought the boy was possessed, but he was not. After visits to several hospitals, one clinical finding in the end revealed that the boy had a head injury which severed the connection that ran from the particular visual center of his brain to the particular emotional center of the brain. As a result, the boy couldn't feel the warmth that he should feel on seeing his mother, because whether it is the warmth that a person feels on seeing his loved ones, or the terror or the fear that a person feels on seeing a tiger, it's all the result of the electrical activity that occurs through the circuits of the brain. But in this particular case, when the mother telephoned from outside, the boy fell to the warmth and reacted with love. He said, "Come on, Mom, where are you? I want to see you, I miss you, I love you." Because the connection from the auditory cortex to the particular emotional center was intact. Therefore, he could feel the warmth. Only the connection that runs from the visual cortex of the brain to the particular emotional center was severed. As a result, he couldn't feel the warmth. Hence the rejection by the son of his mother. But in the end, when the boy was convinced that the feeling that he was producing was unreal, acceptance of the opposite fired the shot that caused the brain cells to connect to the unconnected, because nerve cells fire together or wired together. This delusional state is called the Capgras syndrome in neurology.